Hi, my name is Sean Kelly. Welcome to Sacred Apothecary, where I try to make it my mission to educate you and others about the value of self-care and how easy it is to implement long-term practices for long-term biochemical results. There are connections between very simple daily practices that we can do that have been illuminated by scientific research. These connections are between very straightforward and simple daily activities and how they relate to really complex biological activities in the body. And so the focus of Sacred Apothecary is to teach or to remind people of how to take charge of their own healthcare approach. There's a term that I love that seems to have lost its place in medical care, and that term is adjunctive care. The concept of adjunctive care is using holistic approaches to healthcare that have dramatic effects on supporting our body towards healing itself. Somehow or another, this word seems to have been forgotten in one too many doctors' offices and one too many insurance providers' packages. Vitamin C, baking soda, apple cider vinegar, foods that you can buy at the local health food store, and other foods that I recommend buying online, and then just a handful of really important key supplements, some of which are liquids, some of which are pills, some of which are powders, that you can add into your life that will eliminate the basic causes of some of the most common diseases that are going on and running rampant in our neighbors, in our families, in our children, and in ourselves. And what we see is that behavior patterns directly relate to the experience of illness and diagnostic disease, diagnosed disease states. So, if these activities that we take part in on a daily basis are adjusted, then you can have an enormous impact on your long-term effect of wellness and vibrance and joy. The holistic model is really important to me because it pulls in psychological, spiritual, and physical health into our model, into our concept of what it means to live a fulfilled life. Just like the idea is not to necessarily live to 140 if you're miserable. Quality of life is much more important than longevity, and when quality of life is not there, longevity is not even on people's minds. So how do we generate a quality of life situation? Well, that's really the difficulty in that, is that we've got to realign away from everything that we think of as the culture that we live in terms of really awesome microbrewed beers, in terms of really great locally made breads, in terms of gluten-free pastas and gluten-free breads. We've got to take this concept of gluten-free to the next level, of starch-free. We've got to take this concept of healthy sugars, healthier sugars, into the concept of reducing the dependency on the need for the taste of sweet. We need to open up our menu of what we eat on a regular basis to another segment of food and another way of producing and procuring our food. These are not that complex. They're just changing the habits away from what makes us feel good in the immediate sense, and then what makes us feel good in the longer term sense. Really, it's about welcoming in a further sense of maturity around how we feed ourselves. Learning to come to the dinner table and using forks and knives rather than shoveling food in our mouth with our hands every time we're hungry is the first step, the grandma step to this process. And then learning how to make soup stocks, learning how to make sauces, learning how to roast veggies, learning how to make salad dressings, learning how to sprout your wheat berries, learning how to sprout your beans, learning how to use kitchen equipment in a different way. This is not just cooking because it's fun. This is really serious self-care and getting foods into your body that aren't available in the normal shopping experience in the ratios that we would like to be putting them in our bodies. So getting a more holistic image of how the body works is really essential to changing this process. And then there are some key parameters that we need to think of about how we go through our days and how we feed ourselves emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, how we feed ourselves. So to think about ritualizing the morning cup of tea, to think about ritualizing brushing our teeth and drinking water and making smoothies and approaching the people in our lives and consciously relaxing ourselves. These are all just as important as each other. There's no one thing that wins out until you get them all into one model where they all are mutually supportive to each other. And this is so important today to recognize because this is the primary avenues of how stress affects our physical being. Arterial sclerosis is directly related to emotional stress. We know this. Inflammation from our fat tissues and patterning of eating process is directly related to needing a deeper sense of fulfillment in the world. And then on the non-emotional side, if we're reliant upon starch and sugar and caffeine and energy drinks to give us a sense of well-being, then we're smacking our hormone system repeatedly throughout the day out of alignment, and it creates a positive feedback loop of patterning that isn't good for us, but yet feels good in the moment. So repatterning our belief systems, repatterning our daily actions, what we put in our mouth, what comes out of our mouth, and how we think to ourselves. These all are mutually supportive, so that eating less sugar and not drinking alcohol, because eventually after they're metabolized, they're depressants, helps us to think better about ourselves and our place in the world, and ultimately leads to a sense of renewed or increased empowerment. So it's an ongoing cycle that we enter into. And by controlling inflammation and balance, we automatically balance our hormone system. And by balancing our hormone system through our food intake and our daily practices, we control inflammation. And that's the basic structure of this program. Everything else is just a key set of about 50 supplements and foods that I would love for you to learn about and incorporate into your life. And that once you do, and you have these things at arm's reach in your house at any time, or in your office at any time, you can reach for them, that the enormous impacts of just these 50 foods and these few practices and these 6 foundations of healthcare, hydration, cellular protection, metabolism, immunity, movement, and rest, remembering these things and how to use them and getting deeper into relationship with them will impact your health in such a dramatic way that after about 3 months you might not even remember any one element that helped you to feel so good. You'll see it as a whole package, a lifestyle package. It's very easy to learn this program. It takes a little time to balance everything physiologically so that it's easy to do this program. And that time period is about 3 months. And then the ongoing healing process that inevitably will ensue after that, all the shadow work and all the emotional work, probably a 5 or 10 year or a lifetime process, but they're impossible to really get to the bottom of until you have this physiological sense of well-being. So that's what my job is to make this as simple as possible so that you can actually implement it into your life. That's the role of Sacred Apothecary. Please email me questions. Please email me for any of our documents. I'd be glad to send you our 2-page diet protocol, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the whys and the wherefores and the ingredients that you can get started with today to move along in this process and ultimately make your long-term healing process easy, pain-free, and even enjoyable. So thank you so much, and I hope you watch the rest of our videos. We'll be putting them out more and more as time goes on, and this becomes the focus of my life. So thank you for supporting me in my inspiration. I hope to be able to support you in yours. All the best.